Alright, so last night I watched Brightburn. It's basically a take on what would happen if Superman turned evil as a kid and decided to take over the world. I found it interesting, so I'm making a video on it. The movie starts off with our main characters in bed, keeping it PG. This chick Tori gets up after hearing a noise. Spooky. The camera then pans to something glowing red that crash landed outside. We get a montage of that baby alien as it grows up, and we cut to 10 years later. Tori is playing hide and seek with her son Brandon. She can't find him inside, so she goes out to the barn. He jumps out at her and scares the socks off her. They head outside and are greeted by the dad, Kyle, and he's like, "What are you guys doing? You know the rules. No going into the barn." I wonder why. He then offers to make waffles, and they're all just a big ol' happy, loving family. Surely nothing will go wrong. The next day, while Brandon's at school, we see him drawing his symbol, BB for Brandon Breyer. His name, obviously. But the real thing we need to focus on in this scene is Brandon's teacher.
Lord have mercy.
I'm about to bust.
I wish I had teachers like this growing up. Unfortunately, I had stray cans. Probably for the best though. If this teacher ever called me up in front of the class to do a speech, it would have been a devastating day. Anyway, the teacher asks a question, no one knows the answer, and so she calls on Brandon. Brandon gives this overly drawn out answer so that the audience knows he's smart and he gets made fun of.
Why are you always talking about magics? Must be one.
Why you always talking about magics? Must be one. Then this chick turns around and says, and I quote, "Don't worry, smart guys end up ruling the planet." What normal human being would say that? Later that night, Brandon's catching some Z's and his mom is working on a painting. The camera pans to a hatch in the barn and it's glowing red and making some very strange noises. It starts talking to Brandon and he tweaks out for a minute. He then gets up, opens his window, and jumps out. The mom hears something smack the ground, so she goes outside to check it out. She heads out but finds nothing. Just as she turns around to walk back inside, something flies by. Naturally, she has to go and Scooby-Doo that shit. She heads out to the barn and finds Brandon spazzing, trying to open the hatch while muttering gibberish. She walks up and touches his shoulder, which snaps him out of the trance. The next day, Brandon is back to normal. He and his dad talk for a bit, just some father-son stuff, before his dad puts him to work on the mower. Brandon has a little trouble getting that bad boy started. I mean, he's really struggling. But then somehow he launches it 100 yards away. It feels strange that he struggled to start it, but could launch it into next week, but whatever. He walks over to the mower, and with the voices talking to him again, he puts his hand in the blade, which breaks while he remains unharmed. So if you're not catching on because it happened so quick, Brandon isn't just straight up evil. He's being influenced or controlled by the voices in his head from the spaceship he came to Earth in. Unfortunately, we don't really get to see Brandon being a normal kid at all in this movie. Later on, Brandon celebrates his birthday at a diner with his family, including his uncle Noah and his aunt Marilee. Noah gives Brandon a rifle for his birthday, but his dad is very much against it. Brandon's not here to play around.
I said, give it to me!
We are leaving. Let's go.
Later that night, they talk about how out of character that behavior was for Brandon. But they leave out a slightly important fact. He's an alien from outer space. You know, maybe that could have something to do with his behavior, but I don't know. The next day, they get packed up and ready for a camping trip. While that happens, Kyle finds Brandon chewing up his fork like a weirdo, and his mom finds his jack stash in his room. I can't show it. They look through it and find regular material like prime Megan Fox, but they also find some pretty weird pictures like internal organs and things like that, which is pretty weird. But again, they treat it like he's just a little off and fail to realize he's not a human. The next day while hunting, Kyle gives Brandon the birds and the bees talk and tells him that it's okay to act on his urges. Kind of a weird way to put it, but Brandon does just that. He dips out from the campsite that night and rolls up on Caitlin, who he saw earlier at school. He somehow manages to open her laptop without making a noise, and when she closes it, he somehow opens it again. She then finds Brandon creeping behind her curtains, but when her mom busts in, Brandon vanishes instantly. Back in the woods, Brandon is found by his mom outside the tent, and he's like, "Yo, chill out. I was just draining the weasel." The next day, Tori talks to her sister about how she's worried about Brandon.
He's so different.
It's called puberty.
Yeah, that would make sense if you didn't find him in a crater from space. Be prepared. This mom is going to piss you off as we get further into this movie. That night, while Kyle's in the barn, he hears the chickens going crazy. Thinking it's a wolf, he loads up and heads outside, but instead, he finds Brandon being a weirdo and just creeping. Later that night, Kyle wakes up and finds all the chickens dead. He wakes Tori up and tells her about it. She's like, yeah, okay, big deal. The wolf is back. Yes, Tori, the wolf tore the door down and tore up all the chickens just for funsies. Kyle is adamant it was Brandon. He tells Tori that a wolf can't physically rip a door off and break a lock. And I'm serious when I say this. Tori sarcastically says, but our 12-year-old son can?
But our 12-year-old son can.
Well, Tori, your son is an alien, so yeah, it's possible. The next day at school, Brandon and his classmates do this dumb circle trust fall thing. When it's Brandon's turn, Caitlin lets him fall to the ground. She's told to help him up, but when she reaches for Brandon, he grabs her hand and breaks it. Caitlin's mom, Erica, is absolutely furious and wants Brandon booked and sent to jail, but all he gets is suspended from school for a little while. Pretty light punishment considering he turned a girl's hand into mashed potatoes. Also, no one is questioning how a 12-year-old skinny kid could do that to someone's hand. Like, what the? They're not going to question how a kid could even do that? Later that night, Tori finally confesses to Kyle that when Brandon was sleepwalking, he was actually in the barn. Kyle finally addresses the fact that Brandon is an alien and has never bled once, or even been bruised.
He's never bled. Not once in his whole life.
Later that night, Tori does some research on meteors. Brandon gets drawn outside by the voices again. He gets to the hatch, breaks in, and starts tweaking. Tori sees the glowing red light from the barn and comes to find Brandon floating over the door. He falls into the hatch and actually cuts himself on the spaceship he came to Earth in. This is the only thing that's ever made him bleed. Let's take note of that. The finding of the ship prompts Tori to tell Brandon where he came from, but this just pisses him off. He storms off and starts wrecking the whole house. He heads outside and deciphers the words the voices have been telling him.
Take the world.
Take the world. And this is where shit starts getting crazy. He pays Caitlin a visit and is again on some weird shit.
Very special.
Caitlin tells Brandon that her mom told her not to talk to him. Brandon says, don't worry, I'm going to take care of that. We cut to the diner. 1 second, the windows are clean. The next, they're covered in Brandon's BB symbols. The lights start to flicker. While Erica is looking up at them, the light shatters and a piece of glass gets stuck in her eye. She pulls it out and it's absolutely horrible to watch. So, it's being replaced by these LeBron highlights. Prime LeBron was absolutely vicious. Anyway, she runs and hides in the freezer, but Brandon lasers the door open and takes her out. The next morning, Brandon comes downstairs and is like, you know how I freaked out yesterday when I found out I'm an alien? Don't worry. It's like totally chill. Seems a little suspicious, but alright. At the diner, the sheriff looks around and finds Brandon's BB symbol on the glass. I'm sure that'll be used later. Alongside Brandon's suspension, he also has to see a counselor, and lo and behold, it's his aunt. She asks Brandon if he feels bad about hurting Caitlin, but he couldn't care less. He also starts talking about being superior.
I just know him something else. Something superior.
I feel like we've seen this before.
I'm an apex predator.
So, I didn't realize it till now, but Aunt Marilee is kind of bad. She tells Brandon that she has to update the sheriff and his parents on his behavior, and it's not looking too good. Later that night, Brandon pays Marilee a visit and tells her she shouldn't say anything about his behavior. But Marilee is like, I have to. Plus, you coming here late at night and basically threatening me is not helping your case. She tells him to leave and shuts the door. She texts Noah to let him know she's going to bed, but she never notices Brandon being a peeping Tom in her closet. Noah, who is at the bar while this happened, heads home. While brushing his teeth, he doesn't notice Brandon lurking in the corner like a weirdo until he flies to the closet. He finds Brandon there and he's like, yo, what are you doing in my closet wearing this creepy mask?
What the f are you doing in my closet wearing this creepy mask?
He brings Brandon to his truck to take him home, but Brandon slaps the mask on and sends Noah flying into the garage before dipping out. Noah freaks out, hops in his truck and flees the scene, leaving his wife behind, who, by the way, somehow didn't hear any of this commotion apparently. While driving, Brandon smacks the car, which causes it to break down. The headlights go off, and when they turn on, we see Brandon just standing there like a menace. They turn off again. Noah tries to get the truck started, which doesn't work. And when the headlights turn on again, we see Brandon again. But this time, he's floating.
Nope. No. No. Nope.
I'd probably have the same reaction, not gonna lie. Brandon lifts the truck from the back slowly, then drops it back on the road. Noah's jaw eats the steering wheel and he slowly bleeds out while Brandon just stares at him. And obviously, I feel bad for bro, but he could have just gone back inside earlier. He didn't have to dip out in his truck in the middle of the woods, and he left his wife behind, which is kind of dirty. Brandon comes back home to his worried parents, and his explanation of where he was doesn't really help his case.
I was playing soccer.
You've been playing soccer this whole time?
Sure. Later that night, Kyle has a dream. He finds himself in the woods with his wife, holding the baby alien. We get an evil baby jump scare. It's not even that scary, but when I watched this for the first time, I nearly shit myself. Just thought I'd mention that. Anyway, they get a call from Marilee and head over to the hospital, where she tells them what happened to Noah. She also mentions that Brandon was at her house before the incident happened. So the next morning, they decide to confront him. Tori tells Brandon what happened to Noah, and bro couldn't care less.
I feel like you want me to cry or something.
Brandon says he has nothing to do with Noah's death, and Kyle finally grows a pair and calls him a liar. Brandon tries to leave, but Kyle grabs him, and in return, Brandon sends his dad straight through a wall. Later on, while Brandon is showering, Kyle raids his room and finds a hidden bloody t-shirt. Blatant evidence against Brandon. Surely, Tori will realize her son's a monster after being shown this, right?
That could be anything. How could Brandon have killed Noah?
Bro, what the fuck are you on? He's an alien. He's never been hurt, except for when he cut himself on the spaceship. He's like 50 pounds and just launched your 200+ pound husband into a wall with ease. She somehow turns this all on Kyle and blames him for letting Noah drive home from the bar. This chick is delusional. We cut to the sheriff, who notices that the BB symbol that was on the diner window was also at Noah's crime scene. Back at the Briars house, Kyle starts reminiscing about when Brandon was just an innocent kid. So later that night, he tells Tori that he's gonna take Brandon out to the woods for some nice bro time to ease the tension of what's been going on. The boys pack up and leave. While they're gone, Tori is visited by the sheriff, who asks about Brandon. As we know, this chick is delusional, and her sweet boy can do absolutely no wrong. So she tells the sheriff to kick dirt and go away. But before leaving, he shows her a picture of the BB signature. So after he leaves, she runs upstairs and goes through Brandon's stuff, where she finds all his freaky evil drawings and the BB symbols everywhere. But talking about Brandon, let's check up on him and Kyle. Brandon kneels down to look at some tracks, and while he's distracted, Kyle lines it up and blasts him in the back of the head. It does nothing. Do you not remember saying the boy has never been cut or bruised in his entire life? Well, worth a try, I guess. Brandon flies off, and Kyle books it out of there, with Brandon chasing him. After getting suited up, Brandon knocks his dad to the ground, grabs him, and as Kyle begs for mercy, Brandon gives him the full Homelander treatment. Tori calls Kyle, but Brandon answers the phone and gives her the bad news. We get this pretty dope shot of him flying over the house. He then starts absolutely destroying the place. Tori takes cover and calls the police, while Brandon blitzes through the walls. The sheriff arrives at the house, and it's a two-man mission. For some reason, they decide not to call any backup. Tori runs to the door when she sees the sheriff, but the sheriff gets absolutely obliterated by Brandon. She runs upstairs while the deputy stays behind to handle business, and I've got a good feeling about her. She looks like she can get the job done. Brandon comes in looking for his mom, but she manages to crawl out from under the bed and hangs out the window. When the coast is clear, she falls to the ground and accidentally cuts her hand doing so. This reminds her of the barn and how Brandon can be hurt by the alien spaceship. She books it to the barn with Brandon hot on her tail, but somehow she manages to get there and to the hatch safely, even though earlier we saw Brandon has super speed. But whatever. Inside the hatch, she finds Erica's body, chilling there, along with BB symbols all around. She grabs a sharp piece of the spacecraft and slips it in her back pocket. She then gets out and starts calling for Brandon. When he arrives, she talks him down and is able to get him to chill out a little. She tells him she loves him and still believes he can be good. Brandon agrees and says he wants to do good. But that switches up pretty fast. While they're hugging, Tori tries to stab him in the back and fails. He flies her through the barn and up into the sky. In a slow motion shot, he drops her, and she falls slowly to the ground. I wonder if she still thinks he's an innocent kid who can do no wrong. While still in the sky, Brandon sees a plane, and in the next shot, we see that he homelandered that bad boy too. The end of the film shows Brandon's highlight reel, destroying stuff and leaving his symbol behind. So yeah, Earth is probably cooked. But yeah, that's Brightburn. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below, and also let me know what videos you guys want to see next. But that's all I've got for you today, so I'll see you in the next one.